Now, how fitting was that when I'm praying and the ambulance went by or a police car? The reason that's fitting is because my message today is entitled, How to Be Sane in an Insane World. I think everybody would agree the world's gone kind of cuckoo these days. Everything's in turmoil. Now, it's always been that way since Cain killed Abel, but the intensity is just multiplying. And the other thing that complicates matters is because now with our media, we can see what's going on. And if it's not on national news, you can go online and you can see about all these battles and skirmishes and atrocities all over the world in very vivid color and pictures and actions. And when you see all these things, it tends to wear on us because we are emotional beings. Like you've heard me say a million times, you are a spirit, you have a soul, you live in a body. We, in our soulish realm, we have our heart, which is the way we logically think and reason, and our heart, the way we emotionally feel. And when things happen, it emotionally affects us. Did you ever watch a movie and you cried? And you don't even know those people, but it made you cry. Did you ever watch a movie and something happened and you went, oh, and you got scared? Now, it didn't happen to you, but by seeing things that are happening to other people, it affects us. So that's one reason so many people nowadays say, I just feel I'm under so much stress. And I even hear people say nowadays that, you know what, I just feel so overwhelmed. So when you're overwhelmed, what does that mean? It means usually that our emotions have just become so supercharged that it just kind of overpowers us and it affects us. It wears on our nervous system. So I want to share with you 5 things today that if we practice these, they can actually revolutionize our life and also help us to remain sane in an insane world. Now, the first statement is this: your mind is your greatest weapon, or it's your greatest enemy, and it's up to you to decide. None of us can decide or can control what happens to us. I can't control what's happening in other parts of the world. I wish I could go to Nigeria and stand up on a street corner and say, everybody be nice to each other and stop all this killing. If I could go there, how effective do you think that would be? But what's happening when I hear about these things, it troubles me because I've been through hardships in my life and I relate how that would be. We cannot control what happens to us. The only thing we can control is how we respond to it. In Proverbs 23:7, Solomon said, "For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he." You know, right now at this very moment, somewhere in the world, someone has just died. Right now, somewhere in the world, this very second, somewhere, somebody has been sold into slavery or been beaten up or had their house burned down, something bad. And if we think on that, because we are emotional beings, it weighs on us. And when you turn on the news and you see all these things going on, that's when you get overwhelmed. But did you know right now, this very second, somewhere in the world, a couple just had their very first baby. And that new mom is holding her baby. And the father's, hugging both of them. And they're so happy and so much joy. Somewhere in the world right now, somebody's having a birthday. And they're happy and they're blowing out their candles and people are giving them presents. So all these things are happening at the same time. But you know what? Which one do you focus on? The Apostle Paul said, whatever is lovely, whatever is pure, whatever is of a good report, think on these things. Now that's the same Apostle Paul that says the Lord does not want us ignorant of the devil's devices. He wants us to be aware of what's going on in the world, but what we focus on, what we spend our time thinking about, make sure it's the good things, because there are good things happening. I heard a story once about a guy went to a party, and he went there and nobody talked to him. And he saw all these other people having conversations and laughing, and he left. And then this other person went to the same party, and he went up to some people and introduced himself, and he sat down and had some food with these people, and they were laughing and joking. So then they talked to those two people. They said, "You both went to that party. What did you think?" The first guy said, "It was terrible. It was boring. Nobody was friendly. I didn't have any fun at all." But the second person, they said, "Well, what did you think? You went to the same party." "Man, it was a blast. These people were great. I had a good time." Same party, just different point of view. And I'll do this real quick, because some of you know what I'm going to do with this. If you look around the room, okay, look around the room at everything that it's red or burgundy color. There's a lot of burgundy in this room. Look at all of it, okay? Now close your eyes. Now tell me everything in this room that's green. Your mind doesn't work that way. We focus on certain things. And our mind can be our greatest weapon. We can have like a laser beam and focus on the good things of God. This is the day the Lord has made. I'm going to rejoice and be glad in it. Or we can focus on all the negative and say, this is a terrible place. I don't want to live. Nothing breaks my heart more than when I hear of someone who took their life. I know that because the first 22 years of my life, every day was wondering, is this the day I'm going to take my life? Because I was so miserable. But it's all in the way you think of things. So everybody's given a mind. You can do whatever you want with it. Like the old saying, I can't be responsible if birds fly over my head. I can only be responsible if I let them make a nest in my hair. And yes, I know it's hard to make a nest in my hair. But we all have that choice. So your mind is either your greatest weapon or your greatest enemy. And as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Second thing I want to share with you is discomfort is not your enemy. But avoiding discomfort is. Everybody's life, do you ever hear the old saying, into each life a little rain must fall? Anybody here ever live a perfect life with no problems, and every day you're giggling because life is so good? Anybody like that? Have you ever met anyone like that? Of course not. Not in this world. We all have discomfort. I have this discomfort every morning about 6:30 when my alarm clock goes off, and I got to get out of bed. And I sit on the edge of the bed and I say, okay, Lord, which job am I going to today? What am I going to do? What's all the responsibility? That's discomfort. It would be so much more comfortable to just turn off the alarm, roll over, and go back to sleep and get up at 10. It would be so much easier. We all have discomfort, but discomfort is not our enemy. What is our enemy is trying to live a life to avoid discomfort. When I was a young man, because the way I was raised, I had a lot of discomfort in my life. So then when I, got older and I got out of the house, I lived a life where I avoided discomfort. If I was in a job or a relationship or with a friend or a girlfriend and anything didn't go the way I wanted and I felt this much discomfort, I was gone. I'm out of here. I don't need this. And I avoided discomfort. But when you live a life to avoid discomfort, you miss so much. Because when you run from hard things, you're teaching yourself to run away from everything. When you do something difficult that you don't want to do, have you ever had to do something and you thought, man, I can't do that, or I don't feel like it, or I don't want to, but you did it anyhow and you got it done? Didn't it feel good to look back and say, I accomplished that? It feels good. But when you do something difficult, you're training your nervous system to say, you know what? I'm not afraid of hard, difficult things. I overcame that, so I can overcome this. And then, of course, there's always what the Apostle Paul told us, I can do all things through Christ. And he's the one that strengthens me. It's not me that's doing it. I mean, I got to do the labor, but it's him that's helping me every step of the way. Yesterday, my brother came over, and I was working in the backyard, but in between that, him and I put up 4 lights in the house. And they were totally different styles, so we had to do all this stuff hanging. Well, he did all this stuff hanging up in the ceiling. And I was doing a whole lot of praying. And you know what? It's all done now. And it looks really nice. And the most important thing is I have a happy wife. And a happy wife is a happy life. But I'm so glad. It would have been much easier. I had a day off to just sit in the chair and drink Bosco and watch Bozo reruns. I mean, it would have been so much easier. But I did the difficult thing. And when I got out of bed this morning, my whole body hurt from all the work I did in the backyard. But I look in my backyard now and I say, that really looks nice. I cleaned up everything left over from winter. When you do difficult things, you're training yourself, your nervous system to say, I can do whatever comes across my path. The Apostle Paul said this in Romans 8:18. For I reckon, he was from down south, I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. Now this is spoken from a guy who had been beaten with rods 3 times. Now back in those days, if you did something wrong or something they didn't like, they'd beat you. And it wasn't like, when I was a kid, this shows you how old I am, teachers could paddle you. And my wood shop teacher, he had this paddle, a 2-handed one that was aerodynamically designed with holes in it. And you could hear that thing whizzing through the air. And boy, when he hit you, you knew you were being hit. But what the Apostle Paul had, they had rods, and they would beat you on the back and rip the skin off. Now, they said 40 lashes would kill a man, so they would always beat you with just 39 because they were trying to be humane. Well, that happened to him 3 times. And then he was stoned to death once because he said, I ascended to the 3rd heaven and saw things that's not lawful for man to repeat. He was stoned to death. Anyone here ever been stoned to death? I hope I never have. Sounds kind of difficult. And he was shipwrecked on the Isle of Crete. And he had, who knows how many times he was imprisoned. He ended up in the Mamertine prison in the dungeon before he was beheaded. So this is a guy that says, I reckon that all the sufferings, and he knows what he's talking about, of this present time, they're not worthy to be compared. Now, the Apostle Paul died, they think, around at the age of 65. That was 2,000 years ago. So I'm sure he didn't have too much trouble when he was a little kid. So let's say the first 5 years of his life were a piece of cake. So for 60 years, he went through hardship. But he's been dancing on the streets of gold for 2,000 years. So when we get to see him someday, and we go up to him and say, Paul, how did you get through that shipwreck? Paul, you were bit by a poisonous snake once and you should have died. Paul, and he says, I don't even remember that. That's not even worth talking about. Look at where we are now. The glories of heaven. So everybody's gone through hard times, and I'm sorry. Because I've been through hard times, and I know how much hard times hurt. But you can't let that force you into a life to be afraid and say, I don't want to get hurt again. Because if you don't want to get hurt again, you're hurting yourself because you're avoiding life. Because life has good and bad in it. So discomfort's not your enemy. Avoiding it is. 3rd thing, you are not your emotions. You're just merely watching them. Now, we all have emotions. We're emotional beings. But nobody in this world can make you angry, sad, or depressed without your permission. There's a story I heard once about this one wise man years ago. And he would travel all these local villages, and he would come like maybe once a month or so. And when he came into town, everybody would come and listen to this man's wisdom just drip off his tongue. He was so eloquent. And this one guy, who's kind of like the town rebel, and he always liked to cause trouble. And he thought, why does everybody go listen to him? I don't like that guy. He says, I'll show everybody he's a fake. He's a liar. I'll show him. So what he did, when the wise man came to town, and he's sitting there talking, and the whole village is listening to him, excuse me, this man started to heckle him. And he says, you're a liar. You don't know what you're talking about. And he just everything he said, he put him down. And it kept going for quite a while. And finally the guy got mad and he says, what's the matter with you? You don't have any courage? I've been putting you down and calling you names all the time you're talking, and you haven't even said a word to me. You're a coward. You're afraid to talk to me. And the man very calmly looked at him and he says, sir, may I ask you a question? If somebody offers you a present and you refuse that present, who does the present belong to? And the man says, well, the one who offered it. And he said, exactly. Since you've been here, you've been offering me anger and bitterness and hostility, and I refuse the gift, so it belongs to you. The man got mad and walked out. And that's kind of like how life is. We're all going to face difficult, stubborn people. And how we respond to them doesn't belong to them. It belongs to us. Now, I go to work every day. I'm M59. And I'm not going to tell you how fast I drive because I might be a millimeter over the speed limit. But I'm not one of those slow drivers. I'm keeping up a good pace. But a lot of times on the way to work, I get these people who just tailgate me and then they zip around me or they cut me off. And I'm human just like everybody else. First thing that rises to my attention is anger and frustration. But I learned something long ago that the Lord showed me this. As soon as that happens, as soon as it happens and I feel that anger, I pray for that person. And I say, Lord, and sometimes I got to force it. Like, Lord, that guy must be really in a big hurry to get to work. Maybe his boss will threaten his job if he's late. Or maybe he's on the way to the hospital to go help his child. Or who knows why. Or maybe he's been a bully his whole life and he's trying to bully me on the road. So I pray for him. I ask you to bless him. I ask you to save him. I ask you to protect him because he needs protection with the way he's driving. But as soon as I do that, all that anger and hostility goes away. And sometimes I have to pray it 2 or 3 times. But I'm not going to let his anger and his rudeness turn me into an angry, rude person. You have more power over your emotions than you think you do. I remember when I was a little kid, my brother had this toy, and it was about that big, and it was a clown, and it was on a base. And if you push the bottom of the base, the clown's eyes would stick out, and his arms and legs would just start flapping all over. And all you'd have to do is push that button, and that clown would be going nuts. And sometimes we walk around, like that old saying, you got a chip on your shoulder. We walk around with a chip on our shoulder. Or somebody can say, hey, look at this. You want me to show you how to make this guy look like a monkey or act like a clown? And just push his button. And he'll start getting mad and yelling and screaming. And I learned a long time ago, my life belongs to any fool who can make me lose my temper. And the way I was raised by my stepdad, as soon as he walked in the room, my blood level went up, my blood pressure, and I was angry just by walking in the room. Until I got to the point and I thought, his drunkenness, his activity is not going to make me be a person like him. Because he would just come in and say something, and all of a sudden I'd be like that monkey, and he's just, and he'd laugh and walk out because he knew how to push my buttons. Well, nobody's going to push my buttons. I'm in control of my emotions. You're in control of your emotions. When we are faced with negative emotions, or something happens, or you're going to get mad or angry or frustrated, just ask yourself, is it worth my peace to express that anger? Now, you may say, but how can I do that? Nobody can control how they act to certain things. Well, the Apostle Paul would beg to differ with you. 2 Corinthians 10:5, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. I heard the other day, I was listening to somebody, and he said the average person receives 14,000 ideas in their head every day. Just watch TV. Get on the internet. Look at some things on your phone. Talk to people. Go to the store and meet people. 14,000 different thoughts every day. And when we respond to those thoughts, it sends out thousands, if not millions, of impulses through our nervous system, and it changes us. Like I said, you're going to the movies, you don't know those actors, you know it's just a made-up story, and something happens and you start crying, and it does something to your emotions. We can be in control of our emotions. We can cast down every imagination and bring into captivity. You know, I've talked to people before and they say, you're just so narrow-minded. And I go, yeah, you're right, I am. Because Jesus said, narrow is the way that leads to life, and few there be that find it. And I want eternal life, so I got to be narrow-minded. And I've talked to some people and they say, well, you got a bad view on things. You got to be more open-minded. And I said, what, open-minded, open like a sewer, and just accept and receive everything? And it's the same thing. We think, well, all 14,000 thoughts that come in my head, I have to entertain them. No, you don't. Who says? Any thought that comes in, if it does not bring into captivity the obedience of Christ, say, nope, I don't want you. You have to leave. It's like every bird flying around. Oh, yeah, I don't wish he wasn't, but he's going to come and build a nest in my head. We are in control of our emotions. Okay, number 4. Remember that your time is limited. And let that wake you up. And what they mean by that is everything that you experience is temporary. Now, I've given you this word picture before, but we live in a time and space. That's what this earth is. There's past, present, and future. Now, there's the past, everything I've lived through. But there's bars between me and the past. I can't go back and redo something that I did before. You know, it's funny when you get older. Like, I'm 72. I got 72 years of experience. But when I look to the future, I'll be very blessed if I have 10 more years. I'll live to be 82. So I got 72 years of what I know happened compared to 10 years if I don't know what's going to happen. So I tend to let my mind be drawn to those things. And then, of course, like we're studying the book of Revelation, the accuser of the brethren, the devil will bring up to your mind all the bad things you did. When you said something, you wish you wouldn't have said it. You did something you wish you wouldn't have done. And beat you over the head and make you guilty about something you did maybe 20, 30. I've been beat up about things that I did 50 years ago. 60 years ago. Now, there's bars here. I can't go back and change it, so don't even play with that. The future, there's a curtain here. I'm thinking, chances are, I'm probably going to live tomorrow when my alarm clock goes off at 6:30, but I don't know what I'm going to face. There's a curtain. I don't know how many more years I've got. Jesus could come back in 15 minutes and then we're all out of here. It's fine with me. But everything we do and everything we experience is temporary. Do you know that today is yesterday's future? And do you know that tomorrow will be today's past? We're moving through time and space. Everything is temporary. Someday is a lie. What we do is we tell ourselves, yeah, I need to do something. I'll do it someday, but not today. None of us are guaranteed another moment. If it's of any importance, like remember what old Benjamin Franklin said? Never put off to do tomorrow what you can do today. If you can do it today, do it. Because we're not guaranteed tomorrow. And we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Now in James chapter 4, verse 14, it says, whereas you know not what shall be on the morrow, for what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanish away. The Apostle Paul said, the things that we see are temporal. The things that are unseen are eternal. Everything you've ever seen, heard, smelled, tasted, or felt, the five senses, are all temporal. They come, they go. So you're alive right now. Now, when I first said that was about 10 minutes ago. That's past already. We're living in right now. Oh, sorry, that's gone. We're living in right now. Oh, sorry, that's gone. Life is temporal. Be alive while you're now. Today is the day of salvation. Today is the day to do the things God's called us to. Now, that doesn't mean that, there's some things that me and Bobette are doing some work on our house that I have to wait. But I can plan those now and be prepared for that now. Number 5, last one. Strength is not the absence of struggle. It's what you build from the struggle that makes you strong. Strength doesn't mean you don't let things hurt you. Because some people, I'm going to be strong, no one's going to hurt me. That's not being human. That's being cut off from your emotions. God's given us the emotion of fear, to fear Him. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. But He's also given us the emotion of joy and peace. Don't be cut off from your emotions and think that, to be strong, I got to just not let anyone hurt me and I got to live in this safe little box. That's not living. The absence of struggle, I'm not going to have any problems. If I can live in a place where I don't have any problems, well, I hope you got a rocket ship because you're going to have to go to another planet. Because Job says, as surely as sparks fly upward, man is born to trouble and to sorrow. This life's difficult. So instead of trying to avoid struggle like I did the first part of my life, realize that when you go through struggles, that's what makes you strong. There's a version of yourself that exists, and it's up to nobody but you to live in that version. And that version says that whatever happens to me, I'm not going to let it destroy me. Now, there may be a time in your life that something happened, a relationship, a financial situation, a job, who knows, that it ended poorly. And that hurt you deeply. But you know what? You're still alive, aren't you? You survived it. Don't be afraid of struggle. It's a part of life. When you were born, you had to struggle to get out of your mama's womb. And then on the other side was this man that you didn't know, or maybe a woman that you didn't know, pull you out, hang you upside down, and smack you on the rear end and say, welcome to the planet Earth. And ever since then, it's been a struggle. But don't be afraid of struggle. If you want to continue in life, you got to face these struggles and say, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. There's nothing that's going to happen tomorrow that together me and the Creator of the universe can't handle. And when I go through that, it makes me stronger. When we use our experiences from life and learn from them, that makes us even stronger. So when you've had a problem and you overcame it, and then you say, when you're facing a new problem, say, hey, I faced that problem years ago, and God saw me through. He'll see me through it again. I used to be at a time in my life, if I had any problems, I would fall apart. And back before I became a Christian, I'd just go get drunk, or I'd go get high, or I'd just go hide from it and try to ignore it. But then when you sober up the next day, the problem's there, only now you don't have any money because you spent all your money on drugs or alcohol, and it's even worse. When you got a problem, just stand up and look it right in the eye and say, I ain't scared of you. All right, I'm sorry, I got to do it. Rocky 3. The first time Rocky faced Clubber Lang, Mr. T, he had all these problems in his life that were messing up his emotions, and he got knocked out flat. But the second time he faced him, he stood there, and he took every punch, and he looked at him and says, you ain't so bad. You know what? You're tougher than you think you are. You've been through some tough things in life, and you're still here. So when problems happen to you in the future, just look at them and say, you ain't so bad. Because you're not just fighting me, you're fighting me and Jesus Christ, the Creator of the universe. All things were made by Him. The things that were not made by Him were not made. So you might beat me up, but you can't beat up my big brother Jesus. You ain't so bad, no matter what that problem is. And by doing that and standing up to these problems, it makes you stronger. James 1:2 says, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations. Now that sounds like, what a masochist. This guy's nuts. Count it all joy? But what he learned is when you face troubles, it makes you stronger. As long as you don't run from them. It may be physical. I mean, there's some people, I don't know, I know none of you have ever experienced this, but some people have physical ailments, or it hurts to go like this, or all kinds of things. Some people have financial problems, like I don't know how I'm going to pay the electric bill. But you made it through in the past, you're going to make it through in the future. Don't be afraid of those things. Just say, you know what? Now is a chance for God to show Himself strong. Remember that one song, I forgot what the title of it is, but it says, if you never had a problem, you'd never know that God could solve it. But He wants to solve that problem. God could solve all your problems. But He wants to solve your problems with you, because in the process, it's going to make you stronger. And I'll close with this thought. We must train our thinking like a fighter trains his body. Because we live in a hostile world. The Apostle Paul said in the last days, perilous times will come. You live in the same world I do. Turn on the TV. There's a lot of perilous things coming. You have two choices. You can hide under your bed and say, woe is me. Or you can stand up and face this world and say, you ain't so bad. Me and Jesus together can handle anything. But you got to train your thinking. When a fighter trains for a fight, you know what he does? He doesn't sit on the couch and just numb out and just flip through all the channels and just, eat donuts. He eats the best he can. He does a lot of road work when he'd rather be laying in bed. And he trains and he lifts up heavy objects and he does push-ups and sit-ups. And then he gets in the ring and he spars with other people. And you know what happens in those sparring sessions? Somebody hits you and hurts you. And they hit you harder and harder, and the better you get, the better the sparring partners, so that when you get in the fight, you can stand up to anybody. And we got to train our thinking to say, you know what? Whatever's going to happen, when I go through that curtain called tomorrow, whatever's going to happen, I know that me and Jesus together can handle it. And if I have a struggle, it's only going to make me stronger. Amen. And I'm not going to fear it. Right. I'm not going to fear it. In the movie The Chosen, again, I know it's just a movie, but remember when, those of you that have seen it, when Jesus was sitting in Peter's house and all the apostles were there, and he was sending them out on their first missionary trip. And he says, I'm going to give you the authority to cast out devils and heal people and raise the dead and all these different things. And Nathaniel, he says, did I miss a ceremony? How are we going to do these things? I don't feel any different. And Jesus looked at him and said, you don't have to feel anything to do great things. And you know what? We're all called to do great things. And you may feel like it or not. It doesn't matter. Your feelings aren't part of it. But remember, you are a spirit, you have a soul, you live in a body. Your spirit has to take over and says, listen, heart, listen, emotions, listen, mind. You're only operating on what you hear, see, smell, taste, and feel, and what your past experiences are. The Spirit is saying, you were called to greatness. In all my battles with all the things I've done in the past, and I just think, man, what a mess I was. One thing that the Lord said to me, it doesn't matter how you think about yourself. It only matters what I think about you. And I'll tell you how I see you. Now, the same God that said, let there be light, and the universe came into existence, you know what he's saying to you? He's saying, you are my son. You are my daughter. You're the son and the daughter of the creator of the universe. He says, not only are you heirs, but you're joint heirs with Jesus Christ. Everything that belongs to Jesus belongs to you. He says, you're more than an overcomer. That's who he says you are. Yeah, but I don't feel that way. Well, who cares what you feel like? I'm telling you what God says. It's our responsibility and our decision if we're going to live up to what God says we are. And I've only got one life to live here on earth, and I refuse to live it in fear. And I've got to fight fear, and I got to fight doubt, just like everybody else. But I fight it. And in the battle, well, you can't do this and you can't do that. Well, maybe I can't, but I can do all things through Christ. It strengthens me. With God, nothing is impossible. Jesus said, if thou canst believe, all things are possible. So don't tell me what I can and can't do. You don't realize who I'm connected to. I'm part of the body of Christ. So we're now going to have communion.